There are cities that died in war, cities destroyed by fire, cities swallowed by earthquakes, and cities erased by disease. But history also remembers a much stranger kind of city. A city that simply stopped. Not overnight, not because of invading armies, not because of famine, not because of plague. The people simply left. House by house, street by street, year by year, until one day, one of the richest cities in the region sat completely empty. Its wells still held water, its walls still stood, its workshops remained untouched, yet the people were gone. For centuries, travelers who stumbled upon the city could not understand what had happened. The buildings remained, the roads remained, even the marketplaces remained. It was as if the city had fallen asleep and never woke up again. Hundreds of years earlier, the city had been one of the most prosperous settlements in the entire region. Everything seemed to favor its success. Trade routes crossed directly through its gates. Merchants traveled from distant kingdoms. Caravans arrived almost daily. Its location was considered perfect. To the north were mountain passes connecting distant territories. To the south were fertile farming regions. To the east were mining communities. To the west were wealthy trading centers. Every road seemed to lead through the city, and wherever trade flows, wealth follows. Within only a few generations, the settlement transformed from a small frontier town into a thriving city. Its population exploded, its markets expanded, its leaders became wealthy. Many believed the city's future was limitless. The city's leaders were proud of their success, perhaps too proud. Every year seemed better than the last. More taxes, more trade, more construction, more influence. New districts appeared beyond the city walls. Additional warehouses were built. More inns opened. The city had become a symbol of prosperity. People spoke of it as a place where fortunes could be made. Young men traveled hundreds of miles, hoping to build better lives. Families arrived seeking opportunity. Merchants arrived seeking profit. Everyone wanted a piece of the city's success. Very few noticed the danger growing quietly in the background. Like many great cities throughout history, its survival depended on one thing: water. A river flowed beside the city. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, but it powered mills, fed farms, supplied drinking water, supported transportation. Without it, the city would never have existed. For generations, the river remained reliable, predictable, stable. Then, subtle changes began to appear, so subtle that most people ignored them. The river shifted slightly. Its current weakened in certain areas. Some channels became shallower. Farmers began noticing unusual patterns, yet nobody felt alarmed. After all, the city was thriving. What could possibly go wrong? The first warnings were easy to dismiss. Harvests remained strong. Markets remained crowded. Life remained comfortable. Yet small problems continued appearing. Fields required more irrigation. Fish became less abundant. Certain wells took longer to refill. Individually, these changes seemed insignificant. Together, they were the beginning of something much larger. But prosperity has a strange effect on people. When life is good, warnings are often ignored. And that is exactly what happened here. Then, another threat emerged. This one came from beyond the city's walls. Trade began changing. New roads appeared. Competing towns expanded. Merchants discovered faster routes. At first, the changes were barely noticeable. A few caravans failed to arrive. A handful of traders moved elsewhere. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming. Yet over time, those small losses accumulated. One merchant became 10. 10 became 100. Slowly, the city began losing something it had always taken for granted: its importance. The city's leaders refused to worry. The streets still looked busy. The market still generated income. The wealthy remained wealthy. From the outside, everything appeared normal. But beneath the surface, the foundation was weakening. Fewer opportunities meant fewer newcomers. Fewer newcomers meant slower growth. Slower growth meant less money. And less money created new problems. For the first time in generations, families began leaving. Not because they were desperate, because they believed better opportunities existed elsewhere. And every family that departed took part of the city's future with them. The changes happened slowly, so slowly that most residents hardly noticed. One abandoned house, then another, then another. Entire streets gradually became quieter. Children disappeared from playgrounds. Businesses closed. Shops remained empty. The city was not dying dramatically. It was fading, like a candle, slowly running out of wax. Travelers began describing something strange. The city felt different, not dangerous, not ruined, just quieter. Many visitors struggled to explain the feeling. The buildings remained impressive. The walls remained strong. The infrastructure remained functional. Yet something essential seemed missing. The energy, the optimism, the belief that tomorrow would be better than today. That belief had quietly begun disappearing, and without realizing it, the city had already entered the final chapter of its story. Years passed. Then decades. The decline continued, not as a catastrophe, not as a crisis, but as a quiet surrender. The city was still functioning. People still lived there. Trade still existed. Yet everyone could feel the difference. The excitement that had once defined the city was gone. The belief that prosperity would continue forever had disappeared. And for the first time, people began asking questions. Questions nobody wanted to answer. Questions the city leaders desperately tried to avoid. Inside the council chambers, concern was growing. Tax revenues were falling. Maintenance costs were rising. The river continued changing. Trade continued shifting. The city was spending more money than it was burning. Yet most leaders refused to acknowledge the seriousness of the problem. They had spent their entire lives watching the city grow. The idea that it could collapse seemed impossible. Instead of solving the problem, they delayed it. They raised taxes, borrowed money, started expensive construction projects, and hoped prosperity would somehow return. It never did. One ruler ordered a massive monument built. Another expanded the city walls. Another commissioned expensive public buildings. They believed appearances mattered. If the city looked powerful, perhaps people would remain. If the city looked successful, perhaps merchants would return. But stone cannot solve economic decline, and impressive buildings cannot create opportunities. The problems continued growing. Meanwhile, the river continued changing. What had once seemed like a minor inconvenience was becoming impossible to ignore. Certain farming communities struggled. Irrigation systems became less reliable. Water levels dropped noticeably during dry seasons. Entire sections of farmland produced smaller harvests. The city depended upon those farms, and the farms depended upon the river. A chain was breaking, one link at a time. Then the departures accelerated. Wealthy merchants left first. They had options. They had money. They could simply move their businesses elsewhere. Many did exactly that. Some relocated to coastal cities. Others moved toward growing trade centers. A few never looked back. Their departure created another problem. Jobs vanished, customers disappeared, money stopped circulating. The city's economic heart was slowly shutting down. The marketplace that once attracted traders from across the region began looking unfamiliar. Entire rows of stalls stood empty. Shops remained closed for weeks at a time. Travelers who had visited years earlier barely recognized the place. Many wondered if they had arrived during a holiday. They hadn't. The city was simply becoming quieter and quieter and quieter. One morning, a family packed everything they owned and left. The next week, another family followed, then another, then another. The departures became so common that nobody paid much attention anymore. Leaving had become normal. People no longer discussed whether the city was declining. They discussed when they themselves might leave. That was when the city truly became doomed. Because once people lose faith in the future, recovery becomes incredibly difficult. Entire neighborhoods began emptying. Not completely, not yet, but enough to change the atmosphere. A house here, 3 houses there, an abandoned workshop, a silent courtyard. Every empty building made the next departure easier, and every departure made the city feel more abandoned. It was a cycle feeding itself. The change was most obvious at night. Years earlier, the city glowed with thousands of lights. Music echoed from taverns. Voices filled the streets. Now darkness dominated entire districts. Travelers arriving after sunset often believed portions of the city had already been abandoned. In many cases, they were right. One local scholar recorded a chilling observation. He wrote, "The city still stands strong, yet each year it feels less alive than the year before." At the time, few paid attention. Today, historians consider it one of the most important descriptions ever written about the city's decline, because it perfectly captured what was happening. The city wasn't being destroyed, it was slowly losing its soul. Then came the moment that changed everything. A discovery, a realization. Something hidden beneath the city for generations. Something that explained why the river was changing. Why farms were struggling. Why prosperity was disappearing. And why the people would soon abandon the city entirely. What the citizens discovered next would transform a slow decline into one of history's strangest disappearances. And once the truth emerged, there would be no turning back. The discovery happened by accident. A group of workers had been repairing part of the city's oldest well. The well had supplied water for generations. Nobody expected anything unusual. But while digging deeper, they uncovered something alarming. The ground beneath the city was changing. Massive cracks had formed, deep underground. Some appeared ancient, others looked disturbingly new. At first, the workers assumed it was merely natural erosion. Then they realized something far more serious. The underground channels feeding the city's water supply were moving. For centuries, unseen waterways beneath the valley had quietly supplied the river. Those underground channels acted like hidden arteries. They fed springs, supported farms, and maintained the river's strength. Now many of those channels were shifting. Water that once flowed toward the city was slowly flowing elsewhere. The process wasn't sudden, but it was relentless. And worst of all, there was almost nothing anyone could do to stop it. When city officials learned the truth, panic spread through the council. Suddenly, years of strange events made sense. The shrinking river, the struggling farms, the declining trade, the weakening economy. The city had been slowly losing its lifeline, and nobody noticed until it was already happening. Desperate for answers, scholars searched ancient records. What they found terrified them. The city's founders had known about the danger. Centuries earlier, similar changes had occurred. Previous generations had recorded warnings. Warnings that had eventually been forgotten, lost among countless other documents, ignored by leaders who believed prosperity would last forever. History had already tried to warn them. Nobody listened. One document described nearby settlements that had disappeared long before the city existed. The reason sounded familiar. Their water sources had gradually shifted. Their farms failed. Their people left. The settlements were abandoned. At the time, many dismissed the record as legend. Now, it looked like prophecy. The evidence became impossible to deny. Each year, the river became weaker. Each year, water levels dropped. Each year, the city's future looked less certain. Citizens began hearing rumors. Rumors became conversations. Conversations became fear. And fear spread faster than any army ever could. People started asking difficult questions. Would the river disappear? Could the farms survive? Was the city doomed? No one had answers. And uncertainty often creates more fear than certainty. Even bad news can be easier to accept than the unknown. The wealthy responded first, as they often do. Many quietly began relocating assets. Property was sold, warehouses emptied, investments moved elsewhere. The city's richest citizens were preparing for a future they no longer believed would happen here. Soon, the departures accelerated. What had once been a trickle became a steady stream. Entire families packed their lives onto wagons. Some moved to neighboring towns. Others traveled hundreds of miles away. Most believed they were making a temporary decision. Few realized they would never return. For the first time in its history, more people were leaving the city than arriving. That single fact terrified local leaders, because cities survive on growth. When growth stops, decline begins. And when decline begins, it often becomes very difficult to reverse. The saddest signs appeared in the city's neighborhoods. Schools grew smaller. Playgrounds became quieter. Children disappeared from streets once filled with laughter. Entire generations were leaving, taking the future with them. By now, entire districts looked abandoned. Nature slowly began reclaiming forgotten spaces. Grass appeared between stones. Vines climbed neglected walls. Birds nested in empty buildings. The city remained alive, but only barely. Then came the storm that changed everything. Not because it was unusually powerful, but because it revealed a terrifying truth. As rain fell across the valley, citizens noticed something strange. Water vanished unusually quickly. Entire sections of ground seemed to swallow it. Large cracks appeared. Some streets began sinking. Buildings shifted. Foundations weakened. Suddenly, the problem was no longer hidden underground. It was visible to everyone. Panic spread. Rumors became certainty. The earth beneath the city was changing. And if the ground itself could no longer be trusted, what future did the city really have? The city council held emergency meetings. Engineers proposed solutions. Scholars proposed solutions. Merchants proposed solutions. But every solution required something the city no longer possessed: time. The changes beneath the valley had been happening for decades, perhaps longer. The city was not facing a future disaster. It was already living through one. Outside the city, farmers faced reality first. Many simply gave up. They sold what they could, loaded their possessions, and left. They understood something city leaders did not. When the land changes, people must change with it, or be left behind. The exodus had begun, not because of war, not because of invasion, not because of plague, but because people had lost confidence. And once confidence disappears, cities often follow. The city that had once attracted thousands now watched thousands leave. Year after year, road after road, wagon after wagon. Within a generation, the transformation was astonishing. The marketplace that once represented prosperity now echoed with silence. The busiest city in the region was becoming a ghost. And still, the final chapter had not yet arrived. The city was dying. Everyone knew it. The only question remaining was how long it would survive. Nobody could imagine that within a few decades, almost every resident would be gone, and the city would earn a name future generations would never forget. The city that went to sleep and never woke up. The final collapse did not happen in a single day. There was no dramatic announcement, no final battle, no ringing of bells, no declaration that the city was finished. People simply kept leaving. A family 1 month, a merchant the next, an entire neighborhood the year after. The city shrank slowly, relentlessly, like a great fire running out of fuel. Eventually, only the most stubborn remained. Those who could not leave, those who refused to leave, and those who simply could not imagine life anywhere else. Many residents delayed their departure until the very end. Some spent their entire lives believing recovery was just around the corner. Surely trade would return. Surely the river would recover. Surely the city would find a way. But the recovery never came. Instead, each year brought fewer people, fewer opportunities, and less hope. Eventually, even the most loyal citizens accepted reality. The city they loved was disappearing. What makes the story so strange is how much was left behind. In cities destroyed by war, buildings burn. In cities struck by disaster, destruction is obvious. But here, the city remained almost intact. Homes stood exactly where they had always stood. Workshops remained filled with tools. Storage rooms still contained supplies. It was as if people expected to return, yet most never did. Some workshops looked as though workers had stepped outside only moments earlier. Projects remained unfinished. Tools remained where they were last used. Furniture remained untouched. Future generations would find these places frozen in time. A snapshot of a city slowly abandoned by its people. Eventually, the traffic stopped. No more caravans arrived. No more merchants entered. No more opportunities waited inside the walls. The roads that once made the city rich now bypassed it completely. Trade had moved elsewhere. Prosperity had moved elsewhere. The future had moved elsewhere. By the final years, only a few thousand people remained. Then a few hundred. Then perhaps only dozens. Historians still debate exactly when the city became truly empty, because nobody stayed long enough to record the moment. There was no final citizen, no final departure, only silence. One night, the city experienced something it had not experienced in centuries. Complete darkness. No lanterns, no fires, no voices, no music, no movement. A city built for tens of thousands now belonged to nobody. The city had gone to sleep, and this time, it never woke up. Years passed, then decades. Travelers occasionally stumbled upon the abandoned settlement. Many found the experience unsettling. From a distance, the city appeared alive. The walls still stood. The towers still dominated the landscape. The buildings remained intact. But upon entering the gates, they discovered something disturbing. Nothing moved. The silence became the city's most famous feature. Visitors described hearing only the wind. No merchants, no animals, no children, no conversations, only silence. The kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable, the kind that feels unnatural. Stories began spreading. Some claimed the city was cursed. Others believed a plague had wiped out its population. A few claimed supernatural forces had driven everyone away. But none of those explanations were true. The real reason was far less dramatic, and perhaps far more frightening. The city had not been destroyed by a single event. It had been defeated by slow change. The kind of change humans struggle to notice. The kind of change that happens year after year, generation after generation, until eventually the world looks completely different. The river changed, trade routes changed, economies changed, opportunities changed, and the city failed to change with them. That was the real tragedy. Not destruction, not violence, not catastrophe. Adaptation came too late. The city's leaders spent too much time protecting what once worked, too little time preparing for what came next. They believed the future would resemble the past. History repeatedly punishes that assumption. Centuries later, archaeologists began studying the ruins. What they discovered confirmed many theories. The city had not suffered a sudden collapse. Its decline was gradual, predictable, and in many ways, preventable. Every artifact told the same story. People left because opportunities disappeared. Resources became less reliable. The city's role in the region diminished. And once enough people left, decline accelerated, exactly as modern economists would predict. Exactly as historians would later understand. The lesson hidden within the city's ruins is surprisingly modern. Most civilizations expect dramatic threats, invasions, wars, natural disasters. Few prepare for gradual change. Yet, gradual change has ended countless civilizations. History is filled with powerful societies that believed success guaranteed survival. Many discovered otherwise, because success often creates confidence. Confidence creates complacency, and complacency blinds people to danger. The city's story survived because its ruins survived. Had the buildings collapsed, the memory might have vanished as well. Instead, the empty streets remained, waiting, silent witnesses to one of history's slowest disappearances. Today, the city stands as a reminder that civilizations rarely collapse in a single moment. Most decline one decision at a time, one ignored warning at a time, one missed opportunity at a time, until eventually, the outcome becomes unavoidable. The city was never conquered, never burned, never destroyed. Instead, it experienced something far more powerful. It was abandoned by the future, and that may be the most dangerous fate any civilization can face. The city went to sleep, and it never woke up again. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's greatest mysteries, remember that stories like these help keep forgotten history alive. Many of the ideas, research assistance, and creative development behind videos like this are made possible through modern AI tools, working alongside human creativity. So if you enjoy uncovering lost cities, forgotten kingdoms, ancient mysteries, and hidden stories from the past, support the growth of the Dustline by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with fellow history lovers. Because somewhere out there, another forgotten story is waiting to be discovered. The end.